Hello and welcome to another edition of the Ask Dr. Pickel show, where we try to find answers for people with chronic health conditions, chronic health issues. Today, I'm actually out of town at a conference, but I was actually pretty excited to go over the adrenal glands and adrenal stress and adrenal fatigue. So pretty important subject. And a lot of people have questions about the adrenal glands. They hear a lot about the adrenal glands, but what really are they? What do they do? What are all their jobs? And how does it fit into your life? Because the adrenal glands, I mean, they live right on top of your kidneys, just right on top there. They're really actually fairly tiny, and they have a lot of jobs and they work a lot. Well, as do a lot of other areas of our body too, but pretty darn important how they affect us or we affect them on a daily basis. You know, the thing that we've got to look at is in our daily lives, things affect us. Physical stress, trauma, emotional stress, emotional trauma, chemical stress, chemical trauma. Different factors are bombarding us day in and day out. You know, your boss yelled at you, you were in an auto accident, there's all these things that go into our lives on a daily basis that affect us stress wise. So our body has to compensate for that, or not even just from stress. I mean, really, these adrenal glands also help to carry us away from stress factors like a bear chasing us, or some other emergency situation where we had to really get up and go fast. So it's really kind of a protective mechanism that the adrenal glands play a role of doing in a lot of ways. But I would say they're kind of overused and underpaid. Let's put it that way. So in daily life, the adrenal glands do a few different things. They affect our blood sugar regulation, our sleep-wake cycle, our energy levels, our immune system, blood pressure. They do a lot of different things. And, just to kind of start off with this, when people are functioning day in and day out, the stress is coming in like we talked about. And so what do we tend to do? We tend to use stimulants because the stress starts to wear you down. The stress starts to make you tired, fatigued, physically, mentally, but you got to keep going because you got to get through your day. You've got certain things you have to do. So this wears you down. So the adrenal glands should help back you up. But if those adrenal glands have been working the day shift and night shift for quite some time because of chronic stress, again, those can be your physical stressors, chemical stressors, emotional stressors. Because of those things, what do people tend to turn to? They tend to turn to stimulants. Your adrenal glands should be your natural stimulant. We'll talk about how here in a minute, but people tend to turn to stimulants when those adrenal glands start to fail or become fatigued. So, and this can be anything from, caffeine, pop, tea, coffee, overuse, nicotine, which, cigarettes, vaping, all these things. And then even these energy drinks, which are extremely high in caffeine too. And then sometimes even non-prescription drugs. So there's many ways people will try to keep going through their day. And you'd be amazed on how many people use those things multiple times per day. So the problem is those things may get you through the next moment, but they're actually making you worse. They're actually hurting your adrenal glands and your system more. So, but the thing is if you go off and you've got a busy day, what do you do? So it's kind of that two-sided story there. It's like, hey, but I got to get through my day, but you want me to heal my adrenal glands. So we've got to try to turn the tide there and get through that. So let's turn back to the adrenal glands. What are these? How does it all work? All right. So the adrenal glands make certain hormones, and we need these hormones. They, again, help us get through our day. Now, the thing is, though, is in order for our adrenal glands to manufacture hormones, what do they need the most? What's the mother of all hormones? Cholesterol. The thing you hear so many horrible things about from those commercials, cholesterol is this bad thing. No, we need cholesterol. Cholesterol is the mother of all of our hormones. We need cholesterol for these hormones. We need cholesterol for our nervous system, the oils in our skin. I mean, cholesterol plays a role in so many things. We got to have it. I've even heard patients where the doctor has said, hey, the lower the better on your cholesterol because it's safe for your heart. Well, the problem there is, if you drop below a 150 on your cholesterol, that's a problem. The research has shown that you can't even manufacture hormones properly when you drop that low. Now, of course, high cholesterol can have some detriments to it, and there's reasons it can go high, but it's looking at the causes. So we're not going to get into the whole cholesterol discussion right now, but the thing to understand is cholesterol is the mother of your adrenal hormones. So you really, really need it. All right, so cholesterol then turns into another hormone that your adrenals use, and this hormone is called pregnenolone. And pregnenolone is going to do some different things here, but we need this hormone. It's from that cholesterol. One of the things this pregnenolone hormone turns into eventually is cortisol. So what does cortisol do? Cortisol is what your adrenal glands release to help pull blood sugar out of your muscles, out of your liver, to keep your blood sugar stable all day. Your brain, your body, they want this stable blood sugar all day long. They don't want a roller coaster in blood sugar. If you go too long between meals, your blood sugar can drop. So then your brain says to your adrenal glands, make more cortisol. So then the cortisol comes out, pulls the blood sugar out, and kind of keeps that blood sugar more stable. But let's say we are chronically going long periods without eating. What happens is, blood sugar drops, cortisol takes over. Now, that won't always happen if you're doing certain things. Let's say you're maybe on like a ketogenic diet or something like that. The fats burn longer. Your blood sugar is going to stay. You're not burning blood sugar at that point. You're burning ketones. So again, there's different ways that we can help our body, but our body can't handle some of these fasting diets, ketogenic diets, things like that, if the adrenal glands aren't working best. Because, I'll have some patients that'll say, hey, I tried that fasting, I felt horrible. Or I tried the ketogenic diet, I felt horrible. Or some of these other ways of maybe where you have to go periods without eating, regular food. And so this has a lot to do with, because your adrenal glands are not working properly, they can't manage your blood sugar. When we talk about blood sugar, we think, but the pancreas does that with insulin. No, the pancreas makes insulin, which is like a taxi cab that carries blood sugar to your cells, but it's the adrenal glands that help to make that cortisol to keep that blood sugar stable, so we need it. Now, the problem is your cortisol should be the highest in the morning and the lowest at night. So when you wake up first thing in the morning, cortisol should be at its highest to push blood sugar to your brain to help you to wake up. Let's kind of take a step back here, because cortisol is on a rhythm. Our adrenal glands are kind of on a rhythm. In fact, our whole body is kind of on a rhythm. It's our sleep-wake cycle. You maybe heard of the circadian rhythm. So we need this. We need it working properly. So cortisol highest in the morning, and we can eat during the day, so it drops. And then at night, melatonin's released, which is the opposite of cortisol. And so then we fall asleep, and then cortisol rises through the night. And as that cortisol rises, because we can't eat while we're sleeping, it pushes blood sugar to the brain, because our brain has to work all night long. Now, the thing is when people have chronic stress or inflammation or a lot of other things going on in their body, that cortisol rhythm starts to get messed up. And it can also get messed up on people who work like the night shift at work, things like that. So the thing is we need that rhythm to be proper. Also, if people are getting into adrenal fatigue, if their adrenals are constantly being affected, then cortisol production really drops. Then we really have no circadian rhythm. And here's the symptoms of that. So if you don't have much cortisol in the morning, it's going to make it hard to get out of bed. You're going to be like, snooze, 2 more hours, please. And then let's say your rhythm's off, and many people, their cortisol's low in the morning, hard to get out of bed, but suddenly suddenly it rises at bedtime where it's like, hey, it's time to go to sleep, but now I'm ready to go. I haven't had energy all day, but now it's time to go to bed, and now I've got some energy. Well, you suddenly got more blood sugar to your brain, and now you can't fall asleep until that cortisol drops, until that blood sugar level drops in your brain. So this can be a problem, and chronic stress really pushes that chronic adrenal stress. And again, these stresses can be all these different factors that affect us daily, or the things we intake, and even things that affect our blood sugar. So many factors. So again, this cortisol, pretty important. Now, cortisol not only helps get that blood sugar going at the right times, but also it's anti-inflammatory. So we need it too. You've heard like cortisone. That's, some doctors may use cortisone to help bring down inflammation, although that can cause problems too. But the thing is it has this anti-inflammatory effect, and our body knows exactly how much to make if it's functioning properly. Some people make way too much cortisone or cortisol all the time. And of course, that can really create problems. That actually can imbalance your immune system. And we'll see this often with people who have adrenal stress issues. And two, if cortisol is high all the time, that's going to be a problem. You're pulling blood sugar into the bloodstream all the time. And to kind of even take a step back too, from a conventional medical perspective, adrenal fatigue doesn't really exist. Adrenal stress issues don't really exist to the point that they're looking for major pathology. If you go to your doctor and you say, hey, I think my adrenal glands are messed up, they're going to check you for Addison's disease and Cushing's disease. So, and we're not going to get into those diseases right now, but again, if you don't have those, then you're considered normal, because those are things that you can perform surgery or take medication for. If you're outside of that toolbox, then sorry, let's wait till it gets worse and then we'll recheck you in the future. All right. So let's get back on topic here. So cortisol, pretty darn important. We need it. We need it to be stable. And then another hormone that this pregnenolone turns into is called DHEA. Now, DHEA is a really important hormone, and then it turns into your sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone. Now, let's also talk about this, that pregnenolone also turns into progesterone on a different pathway. So all of these hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which both men and women have, we need these hormones. They're pretty important. So let's say a woman goes into menopause or a woman has a hysterectomy, and we think, gosh, well, where are you going to get your hormones? Do you have to take hormones? Do you need to get hormone patches? Do you need to take troches? Do you need to take pills? Well, it depends on the condition of your adrenal glands. So, and do you really, does the body, even if you're healthy, need those? Well, the question you have to ask is, why do some women go into menopause and have no symptoms? They're like, hey, I felt great. I didn't have any problems at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Some women are like, I felt horrible. I feel like a truck hit me. Ever since menopause, I've got hot flashes. I've got low libido. I've got all of these horrible symptoms, and it's hard to function. So the thing we have to look at first is the adrenal glands. The women who had good adrenal glands didn't get any symptoms, hardly any at all, or sometimes none. The women who have bad adrenal glands, they're going to get all the symptoms. So the adrenal glands are your backup for your hormones in men and women. In fact, in women, the only source of testosterone is your adrenal glands. So you need these adrenal glands working well. And this DHEA is an important factor here. Now, the thing is the body's going to also kind of look at things in a certain way, in that, hey, if I'm running from a bear, is it important to make stress hormones, or is it important to make cortisol and adrenaline and things like that? So sometimes it will divert hormones. So if you're in a chronic stress or fight or flight mode, your body's going to say, forget the sex hormones, forget all those other hormones. Let's divert everything over to, the emergency situation that's at hand. So that's pretty important to consider. And if your body is in this fight or flight response, if you have high stress, it's going to affect your hormones. Now, again, also your backup system at other times too, and even before menopause, we need these adrenal glands as the backup for a lot of these hormones. So, and then another hormone the adrenal glands make is called aldosterone. Now, aldosterone helps to manage your blood pressure. Pretty important there. You know, we think about blood pressure. What manages blood pressure? Is it my heart? Is it my arteries? Well, actually, the majority happens in the kidneys. But the adrenal glands also play a part in that, high and low blood pressure changes. So if you have a stress response, if you're running from a bear, you need to change blood pressure quickly. Also, if you change position, if you go from laying down to sitting, laying down to standing or sitting to standing, and you're like, whoa, that didn't feel right. I felt swimming in my head, or I felt dizzy, or I felt like everything went black. That's your adrenal glands. They help manage your orthostatic tension, your blood pressure change, getting blood pressure to your brain when you change position, because every time you change position, your blood pressure has to change. You got to get blood pressure going to your brain. So if your adrenal glands aren't working, you'll start to have problems here with this hormone called aldosterone, and you'll start to notice the effects of that. Now, also another thing your adrenal glands make, this is more called the adrenal medulla that makes this, kind of the center, the middle of the adrenal glands, makes adrenaline, which we can also call epinephrine or norepinephrine. So we need this to get through our day. Everybody's making a certain amount of this, very small amount, all through the day. But, you know, again, if a bear is chasing us, we're going to release a lot of this. But also, let's say your adrenal glands are like, oh, you know, he or she's working me the day shift and night shift. We are fatigued. We can't really make cortisol because we're tired. We're not really making a lot of other hormones right now. This is your adrenal glands talking. All right. So the backup hormone will be adrenaline. Adrenaline will pull blood sugar out. It'll help get blood sugar to your body and your brain, and it'll keep you going, but at a cost. You know, we don't want to be releasing adrenaline all the time. We need it in those emergency situations. But if you are releasing it at work through the day, you can have these cycles where it's like, yeah, I'm getting things done, go, go, go. And then as soon as I sit down, I crash. I could just take a nap as soon as I sit down, and then things stop. Yeah, you were running on adrenaline through the day. Now, here's probably even the more common scenario is the adrenal glands play a big role, like we talked about in your sleep-wake cycle. You make the cortisol during the day and then melatonin to help you fall asleep, and then the cortisol rises again through the night. If that isn't working very well, number one, you can have a hard time falling asleep, which we talked about with the cortisol. But number two, what happens if, again, during sleep, our brain has to continue working. It does a lot of things while we're sleeping. Pretty darn important. But that brain requires fuel. Of course, we're breathing, so we get oxygen while we're sleeping. And if you're not breathing while you're sleeping, that can be a problem. And, you know, we've got to look at other things with that. But blood sugar, you got to get blood sugar to your brain. That's that other type of fuel. And that has to happen all night long, but you can't eat while you're sleeping. So what happens? Usually cortisol is released through the night, gets the blood sugar to the brain. If you can't make cortisol properly, if the adrenal glands are having problems, what do you make? Adrenaline. Now, adrenaline will get blood sugar to the brain during your sleep, but what's going to happen to you? Well, if it's a little bit of adrenaline, you'll sleep, but you won't get a deep sleep. If it's a little more adrenaline, you'll sleep, and then you're going to wake up. And it'll usually be on a time schedule. It's like, why do I always wake up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. and then I look at the clock, okay, and then I can fall back to sleep. If it's that amount of adrenaline, yes, sometimes you can fall back to sleep. If you release more adrenaline, then you wake up and then you can't fall back to sleep. And it's like, gosh, it's 3 a.m. I'm wide awake. What the heck is the deal here? I need some sleep. So, it will. We remember we have a circadian rhythm. Things occur on a time schedule. So there's usually timeliness to this waking up, unless you're in really bad shape health-wise. It could sometimes almost seem a little random when things get way out of control and there's a lot of inflammation in the body. But typically people are going to wake up, they'll always be able to say, hey, it's always at this time or this time. So again, we need these adrenal glands working properly to help get you through the night, because when you're sleeping, that's when your body does most of its repair. That's when your body does healing, detoxification. That's when it really, that's your time to get better. And if you're not getting that each night, what's going to happen to the adrenal glands the next day? They never were able to recover. The rest of your body never able to recover. You're just driving yourself down this hill. Now, if again, you're getting tired during the day and you're taking stimulants, yeah, you're just pushing those adrenal glands harder. And again, that's going to be more fatigue. And it's just this repetitive cycle over and over. And then people finally crash. And they're like, whether they crash physically or emotionally or both, they eventually can crash. But again, that relates to genetics too. Some people can really keep it up for a long time, but is their health going to suffer? Big possibility of potential problems there. So what can you do about all this? Well, how do you help these adrenal glands out? Well, number one, don't have any stress in your life. No, that's pretty impossible. And so number one, you've got to lower stress levels. You've got to take some pressure off those adrenal glands. There's some things you can't remove from your life. So you can't. You got to modulate those things. You got to think about what can I do to maybe help in those areas. But if you can remove it from your life, remove it, even if it's temporary, because stress drives this. Again, physical stress, emotional stress, chemical stress, a lot of things. So what do you maybe need to do? Maybe you need to change your diet. Maybe you need to stop eating bad food every day. Maybe you need to eat good stuff. Maybe there's maybe you need to change jobs because your boss yells at you every day. There's all these. Maybe you need to take chemicals and stimulants out of your life. You may have a low for a bit, but then you're going to climb back up. The body has the ability to heal. So there's these different factors there that are more lifestyle changes. Now, there's also things you can do to help too. And again, we just mentioned that diet. Start changing your diet. If you start to eat right, and again, eat right means a lot of different things. Let's qualify that. And again, I don't want to get into that whole topic now, but don't be eating fast food all the time. Don't be eating processed food all the time. Try to get some fresh stuff in. And again, we can help patients with that. We have a lot of patients that we totally help with their diet and their nutrition and finding out what's right for them, because everybody's different. So, the adrenal glands need certain things. One of the signs of low adrenal glands is craving salt. When I say low adrenal glands, let's say adrenal glands that are having trouble, they're fatigued. Sometimes craving salt will appear when they get to a pretty bad point. So now the adrenal glands need sodium, they need potassium, which are electrolytes. So can you increase electrolytes in your diet? Yes, absolutely. Taking electrolyte formulas, that can be one, not the name brand electrolyte drinks as they call them. I'm not really a big fan of them. They usually sugar, saccharin, a lot of stuff in them. There's actually electrolyte powders that you can add that are straight electrolytes. Again, bring up your fruits and veggies, high in potassium. Then you will need sodium. Some people who have adrenal issues, adrenal fatigue, sometimes we'll have them do some salt. Now, you want to find an unrefined salt. You can mix that with some warm water, drink it down. Hooray. The adrenal glands love that. And again, it's kind of mixed. You could potentially mix a little cocktail there. But if you have an electrolyte formula, that's going to have the sodium and potassium in it. Another form of potassium, and you can get in, what is it? It's a cream of tartar, the thing that people have, the spice that's in everybody's cabinet that we don't know what the heck it's for. And then also another herb or botanical that's really been shown in the research a lot is called ashwagandha. Now, ashwagandha has some great effects on helping the cortisol when people have really high cortisol. issues, it can kind of help level that off. It's kind of in that adaptogenic herb category. So if you look up adaptogenic herbs, yeah, these are things that kind of level off the system when people have high stress. It kind of, if something's high, it brings it down, and something's low, it brings it up. It just kind of levels off the system. I don't want to get into the whole physiology of that, but ashwagandha is one. Another interesting one that's good for these high cortisol levels, the beginnings of adrenal stress can be, it's called phosphatidylserine. Phosphatidylserine doesn't really affect cortisol, but it affects the brain's ability to dampen production of cortisol and keep that under control. Because if you're high stress all the time, and even in the early stages of adrenal fatigue, you're making a lot of cortisol. Cortisol is important to a degree, but high cortisol regularly actually affects an area of the brain called the hippocampus, which is your memory area, and it's destructive to that area. So that's why people will say, hey, I had a high stress situation and I don't remember all of it. Well, this cortisol rush really affected you. So there's some different factors that go into that too. And there's a lot of other things that can be done for the adrenal glands, but it's not just, hey, I have an adrenal gland problem, A plus B equals C. Everybody does the same thing for their adrenal issue. It's finding out what your adrenal issue is. Do you have high adrenal function, low adrenal function? Do we go even further than that, like Cushing's or Addison's? What is going on with those adrenals? And then it's finding out what is driving the issue, because majority of the time we find out that these adrenal issues are being driven by internal issues, chronic inflammation. But you can have inflammation, you can have a fire in the house, but what is driving the inflammation? And that's what's important. If you don't find out what's driving the inflammation, is it a chronic infection that your body just can't get rid of? And there can be a lot of things. That doesn't just have to be bacterial. That can be so many other bad guys, yeast and fungal issues, parasitic issues, all kinds of possibilities there. Is it a chemical toxicity issue? We're surrounded by stuff all the time, whether we intake certain things or we get affected by certain things in our environment. Is it a heavy metal toxicity issue? This can compromise the immune system and cause malfunctions there. So, there's all these potential causative factors that we can look for. But the thing is like I said, every person is different. Is finding out, and you can treat the adrenals all day long. You can say, hey, I'm going to take these adrenal supplements all day long. Well, what you're trying to do is you're trying to carpet and paint a house that's on fire. So the thing is you've got to find out what's causing the fire first, or you'll never get there. Now, some people who have maybe some adrenal issues, but don't have a lot of other issues because of maybe overuse of stimulants and things like that, yeah, they may respond better to adrenal supplements, where they're like, hey, yeah, I started taking that adrenal supplement. I've been doing great ever since. Yeah, they didn't have as many issues. But a lot of patients who have autoimmune conditions, chronic health problems, there's more to the story than just my adrenals. There's so many other connections, so many other pieces of the puzzle. And you can't just say, hey, I think it's all adrenal, I'm going to treat this. And then you order some supplements and then you start taking them in. I felt better for a little bit, but now I'm back to square one. So it'll be that road to nowhere if you go in that direction. So again, we can offer help in that. But I hope everybody enjoyed today. I hope you got some great information out of it. God bless, and have a wonderful day.